So those of us who might have attended Catholic school in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia might remember the poem The Wind by Christina Rossetti. Who has seen the wind? Neither you nor I. But when the trees bow down their heads, the wind is passing by. As you know, there are all sorts of winds that affect the physical world. And sometimes the wind is a soft waft from Mother Nature that smells like the spring. We just smelled a lot of that last month. Occasionally, it is an ocean breeze with just a hint of salt. And I love the cool breezes that come in the summer and replace the heat and humidity of the day and give us some respite before we go to sleep. Or it could rain and rain and rain like it did this spring with hardly any wind, leaving us to mourn the lack of sunlight, but blessing us with grass almost as green as that in Ireland. Or a blast from the north could freeze us to our very bone marrow. In July of 2021, after my vegetable garden had produced cucumbers and tomatoes and eggplants and peppers, with a promise of more to come, a sudden and unexpected storm blew up at the end of a very, very hot and very, very humid day. As the cloud cover built, I thought, oh my, I can run out and do some weeding. So I got out in the dirt and I think I picked 2 weeds, and this wind came out of the sky. It was so sudden. I looked up, the sky was pitch black with that hint of green that, kind of strikes fear in your heart. So I headed for my porch as all sorts of stormy hell broke loose all around me. So when I was in the porch, I could see our bald cypress tree. The wind blew it almost down. Its head almost touched the ground. It snapped back up and lost its top 20 feet. Hail the size of ice cubes tore my entire garden to shreds, and also my hostas. They were gone. 2 windows on the side of our house had holes in them, like a giant had got angry and punched holes in the house. And that same giant, it seemed like he or she took all these smashed up green leaves and threw them all over the house as they were all splattered with green. And I have to confess, it was the most frightened that I ever was in my whole life. And I knew just by looking at my surroundings that a fearsome wind had passed by, leaving us with undesirable evidence of its visit. So the storm just followed a very narrow pathway through our township, so only a small number of folks were affected, and thank God nobody was hurt. But the property damage was pretty significant. 3 of my neighbors lost huge heirloom trees, and so did the development across the street from us. Fort Washington State Park became unpassable. But aside from the devastation to my garden, some good came from the storm. Everybody on my side of the street got new siding and new roofs from the insurance company. So there was some good. So our first reading describes an experience of a different, though similar caliber. Though described as a wind, the roaring sound, as we know, is a metaphor for the power of God. And it too is very, very scary. Because the Holy Spirit, like the wind, arrives in any variety of ways. Sometimes gentle and kind, other times freezing cold or deathly hot. Sometimes her damage is significant. Occasionally she might completely destroy our belief system, or other times she might confirm it. She might set up roadblocks along the road that we followed so carefully, leaving only a small trail that goes off in an entirely different direction, where we might have to rethink not only our lives, but who we really are. Of course, because of free will, we can ignore her guidance and minimize her gifts. We can relegate her to a position of inferiority under the thumb of the 2 male members of the Trinity, allegedly, and the male members of the church. With her tongue in cheek, Sandra Snyder's, if you've ever read anything by her, she wrote that the powers describe the Trinity as 2 guys and a bird, thus demoting the Spirit from her position as the strongest force in nature and obscuring her rightful place in directing the unfolding of creation. It doesn't take much to realize that the Spirit is far more than a caged bird singing a song composed by others. She is the voice and the power of change, something the churchmen and their allies in government fear above all else. And if you truly, truly believe in her and obey her, there is no going back. Former things, as the Apostle Paul wrote, fade away, and good riddance to a lot of it, really, when you think about it. So I'm going back to my New York Times op-ed writers. It's the only thing I read anymore because the rest is too scary. Anyway, David Brooks, whom I really like. But anyway, he wrote, he and a number of other white guys of privilege have lately taken to bemoaning an allegedly divine past where he and others claim that people were nice to each other, unlike now. Church people, he and his critics of the secular society claim, played an important role in the construction of a golden age that we would do well to recover. Secular society can never, ever, according to them, affect virtuous living. Effect, not affect. Brooks is 10 years older than I am and grew up in Canada. So as I was reading him, I'm thinking, did he miss the history lesson on enslavement, Jim Crow, lynching, and the suppression of voting rights of our black sisters and brothers by devout and observant Christians? Did he not read about the barbaric treatment of Native Americans by religious folk? Did he not read about the church's role in the oppression of women? Does he not know that Jesus commanded his followers to love everyone, not just a few chosen by those in the church? How did he ever miss all that? The good news, because there's always good news, the good news that Brooks and all of his fellow guys are all wrong. Goodness and virtue is not confined to any specific age or to any specific religion or political affiliation. And the Holy Spirit takes charge, even when people don't believe in her. The work of her hands is all over the world if you have the eyes to see it. My son Neil, who turned 44 this past Wednesday, disproves everything that Brooks writes about. Neil and his family are non-believers and belong to no church community. And yet, he is a Girl Scout leader. He is a member of the school board. He is the president of the Summer Swim League and runs every single home swim meet. He also gave his time and talent to set up this whole Zoom, what would you call it? Our Zoom community. We would not have that without him. His wife, Teresa, is a busy ER nurse, and she is also a Girl Scout leader. She also volunteers her time buying flowers and serving food at our granddaughter's music events. She is camping with the Girl Scouts this weekend in all that mess and rain, just like people did in the past. Some people, not all people. Why Brooks can't find people like Neil and Teresa is beyond me, because they are all over our tiny little township, and they were super abundant in the community that we lived in Philadelphia. Jesus never had problems finding spirit-filled folk, even if they fell outside of the status quo. That's how he met the woman at the well and helped her to recognize her vocation as an apostle. Catholic tradition has long taught us that the nameless woman at the well was a woman of ill repute, that she was so ashamed of who she was that she came to the well in the afternoon when no other women were there, that she had 5 husbands and that she was living in sin. The church declared sordid details of her life have long obscured her fervent, spirit-filled discipleship. Jewish biblical scholar Amy Jill Levine has debunked all of that with her study of ancient Judaism. The woman at the well was a typical Jewish woman who might have been passed to various men through the Levirate marriage. She might have outlived several husbands, or she might have been divorced. Unlike in Catholicism, frequently married women were not anathema in ancient Judaism. Her trip to the well in the afternoon was not made because of shame. While this very ordinary woman was engaged in the activities of daily living, she was confronted with a brand new thing, the powerful urge to be a different person. Whether she heard a whisper or a driving wind or felt a breeze or a gust or nothing at all, we don't know. What we do know is that her encounter with the Holy Spirit in Jesus made her bow down her head to acknowledge the power of God. She changed her life and became an apostle to the people of Samaria. My friends, let that Holy Spirit wash over you, filling you with her wild love. As the old spiritual says, you're the one to profit when you say, I'm going to follow Jesus all the way.